13 August 1961. East Berlin, Bernauer Strasse. A construction worker lays the first concrete blocks. He writes in pencil on a grease-stained notebook. They say this wall will keep fascists out. It feels more like it locks us in. His name in the Bundesarchiv shows as Karl S., born 1928, son of a metalworker and a seamstress. He is 33. He has seen two states rise over the rubble of one city. He has worked a handcart on the ruins, pushed a dolly under new machine tools, and now he is tamping wet mortar in the midnight hours of a new line on the map. He writes a line he cannot say at a brigade meeting. He writes it because he knows this is the moment that will organize all the others in his life. He writes it because he remembers 2 May 1945, Berlin, smoke, rubble, missing people. Precise words in his mother's small, flat hand the week before, "Your father is not home." He never returned from the odor. The streets are a maze of brick and charred beams. Tremorfrauen in headscarves pass rubble in human chains, brick to brick. Women with cigarette stubs in their teeth, hands raw. Boys, including Karl, are told to keep low, to watch for snipers, to pick bread crusts from the gutters if they must. A morning drizzle puts smell back into stone. The Soviet army sets up a command post in a school on Prinzen Alley. Curfew is posted at dusk, and a red star flag hangs limp in the humidity. In an occupation report, the numbers sit still. 30% of Berlin's housing stock is destroyed or severely damaged. The arithmetic of shelter is a losing equation. Rooms are subletted within rooms. Kitchens become bedrooms. Any oven that works is a shrine. In a Soviet Kommandatura order typed in Cyrillic and German, there is a line about quick trials for looters and enemies of the people. Men who had uniforms last week show up in workers' caps and look at the ground. Fear leaks out of closed mouths. A brown uniform becomes a civilian jacket with a missing button. An armband becomes a rag. You do not say certain names. You do not say certain names. You do not keep certain photographs. The hunger winters carve the limits of the day. 1945, 1946, 1947. They are measured in calories. A British occupation health report calculated 1,000 to 1,500 calories per day in many urban districts. The mathematics of food takes over thought. A ration card is cut into neat rectangles. The columns are bread, fat, sugar, meat. The sums rarely match the appetite. Cigarettes replace coins. A carton is a bank. An American pack of Chesterfields buys a pot, a coat, a favor, a bottle of schnapps gone yellow with age. Black market whispers are a city's second language. You learn the price of potatoes in paper money and in smokes. You learn who trades in cigarettes and who takes watches. At the corner of Brunnenstrasse and Gartenstrasse, in a fifth-floor walk-up with the windows nailed back into their frames with wire, Karl's mother has a ledger. She trades hemming jobs for 3 taters and 2 lumps of sugar. He carries pockets of buttons to a neighbor who knows how to recut a jacket. He learns to patch bicycle tires with glue that barely holds. He carries home soup from a makeshift kitchen that smells of boiled beet greens. He dreams of butter. He dreams of bread that tears and gives. People vanish. People return. Some come back thin, with gum disease and eyes that do not focus. Some come back in Allied trucks wearing strange badges. The DP camp at Doppel in the American sector is a world Karl sees from the tram when he braves a crossing into the west in late 1946, when the borders within Berlin are still permeable, when the papers still get you from A to B with enough grit and luck. He stands outside the wire and watches a troupe of Yiddish comedians perform for a crowd that laughs with its whole lungs. He sees men with tattoos on their forearms smoke cigarettes with slow relish. He sees girls dance. He feels the pressure of what they know, and he does not want to know. He writes later, "They told us to look forward, not back. But the camps did not vanish when they freed them. They stayed. They learned to sing again to fix their throats, and we stood on the street and stared." An Allied intelligence summary about German civilians interacting with displaced persons records ambivalence. Some German women bring bread, some jeer, some do not look. The mathematics of contact is brutal in its clarity. The closer you are to a DP camp, the less you claim to have known, the more you claim you're suffering as a counterweight, the less you can hear the particular description of a pit, a ramp, a cattle car that still stinks. Karl helps his mother carry a sack of potato peels to a kitchen on the edge of a DP camp near Zehlendorf once, hears a Ukrainian song that sticks in his ear, and walks home over a bridge that shakes with traffic. Denazification is a word that enters daily talk and then is avoided. In the American and British zones, a questionnaire arrives for everyone born before a certain year. The Fragenbogen has printed boxes for party membership, organizations, donations, positions held. The categories harden into administration: Hauptschuldig, belastet, midavastet, midlastet, midlaffer, entlastet. Major offenders, lesser offenders, followers, exonerated. The Spruchkammer hearings convene. The rooms smell of sweat and paper. Your neighbor testifies that you were always polite. Your colleague says you only joined the party to keep your job. The mathematics of guilt has a set of columns and a schedule. It rewards the performance of contrition and the absence of witnesses. It privileges stability. A denazification file in Munich, 1947, notes a bank official classified as a Mitläufer. After affidavits from subordinates, he returns to work. A teacher in Hesse is barred, then reinstated by 1951. A mayor in a small Ruhr town is replaced by a man who was in the party by membership only, sworn never to have done harm. A woman whose first husband died at Stalingrad sits through a hearing and is told her second husband, a former Ortsgruppenleiter, will serve 2 years. He is out in 12 months. The arithmetic of punishment is overwhelmed by the arithmetic of reconstruction. In the Soviet zone where Karl lives, the process has a different shape. It is faster, harder, more opaque. Lists are drawn of those to be removed from positions. Land reform is stamped and posted, Junkerland in Bauernhand. Estates are broken. Land is distributed to Neubauern. Factories above a certain size are expropriated and made into Volkseigenbetriebe, VEBs, people-owned enterprises. A Soviet document from 1946 enumerates thousands of arrests for political unreliability, sabotage, unspecified offences. Special camps swell at Sachsenhausen and Buchenwald, now holding former Nazis, suspected collaborators, and those with the wrong friends. A trickle of returns, then the silence of those who don't return. The new party, the Socialist Unity Party, the SED, rises from the merger of the KPD and SPD in the East, and a slogan appears on walls: "Where Hitler welt, welt den Krieg. Where die SED welt, welt den Frieden." Choose the SED, choose peace. The anti-fascist self-image is a tool and a shield. It grants absolution to those who bend with it. It threatens those who recall the wrong detail. Karl is a lifter of bricks. He is a caulker of scenes. He is a metalworker's son with a hand for shaping and a shoulder that does not tire easily. In 1948, he is hired as an apprentice in a rebuilt factory that makes electrical relays. The sign over the gate is new: VEB Electro Apparate. Work. The barbed wire is not new, but it is on the edges now to deter thieves. The machines smell of cosmoline and basement. A foreman named Peach shows him how to set tolerances. A party secretary named Gies checks his FDJ card and reminds him to attend a meeting. The mathematics of a factory is a daily ledger of hours, quotas, defects, output. Wages are tied to norms. The brigade is a unit of belonging as much as work. Photographs on court boards show smiling workers joking with their sleeves rolled up, a minister shaking hands with a man without a tie. The anti-fascist story is drilled into morning speeches. The new Germany must be built by those untainted by the old. The claim is not entirely true, and it is not entirely false. The foreman was once a member of the party he claims only for work, and no one mentions his file. The world splits in 1948. The currency splits in June. The West issues the D-Mark. The Soviets answer with the Ostmark. In Berlin, the air splits with the sound of engines. The Luftbrücke begins and Berlin learns it can be sustained by wings. Karl stands with his mother under the approach to Tempelhof and watches Dakotas stacked in a patient spiral. He mouths a number from a newspaper, 2,000 flights a day. The arithmetic of supply becomes an act of faith. The new coins feel like real money in the West. In the East, the notes feel like paper out of a dusty drawer. Prices adjust in both and never match the hunger. Marshall Plan crates stack up on dot plans in Bremen and Hamburg, stamped with white stars and stenciled words. The East watches the West fatten. The East tells itself the West builds on the backs of Marshall, dollars and old Nazis. The West tells itself the East arrests anyone who speaks. Both are right in parts. 1949 is a line. In May, the Federal Republic of Germany is born in Bonn. In October, the German Democratic Republic is born in East Berlin. Two states claim the inheritance of a destroyed nation. The border is a concept in towns and a reality in bureaucracy. In Karl's notebook, the new seals carry an excitement he didn't think he'd feel again. He writes, "Peace is a thing you pay for with a steady job and quiet nights." He is 21. He does not want to think about snow and dead men. He wants to think about switches and relays and the warmth of a stove in a room he can afford. The expellees arrive in both states. The arithmetic of bodies in rooms is the hardest to fix and the hardest to forget. From the East, by foot, by horse, by train, into towns that still smell of smoke. In the West, Silesian families arrive with feather beds tied up in sheets, their dialects marked, their papers crumpled. In the East, refugees from Königsberg and Pomerania arrive and are told they are home now. In a small street in Pankow, an extra mattress appears in a living room and never goes away. The tension is mathematical and intimate. Where does one family's table end and the other begin? Who gets the first pump of water? The locals complain about dirt and about how they bring their heads full of the East, and the newcomers point at the sky and at their children sleeping under coats. In a municipal housing office file in Magdeburg, a bureaucrat draws 3 boxes on a page to represent a flat. Pencil notes divide them into sleeping spaces. Parents, children, lodgers. The arithmetic of 8 bodies in 2 rooms is solved by sleep rotations and thin doors. In 1950, a recruitment flyer in Karl's factory invites party membership. Protect what you have built, it says. Be part of the anti-fascist front. The meetings are long. The language is thick. Words like reactionary, revanchist, imperialist sit next to fascist and peace. He listens and chooses his place. He listens and chooses his place. He joins the FDJ. He does not join the SED. On his shop floor evaluation, there is a penciled question mark next to political reliability. He keeps his head down and his output up. This is the mathematics of compromise. The schoolbook shift. 1951. A new history reader comes home with his niece. The chapter on the Hitler years is titled The Lesson of Fascism, and the photographs show concentration camps, resistance fighters, and party rallies, but it places emphasis on the heroic communists who fought and died. It names Thälmann. It barely names the Jews. In the West, a parallel debate runs through classrooms. Bombed cities fill the illustrations. Women removing rubble are the icons, expellees the main characters. The math of memory is as selective as the math of calories. You count what you can endure. The workplace becomes a court and a school. Quotas are raised. Norma Hungen come down from bright offices with clean carpets and hit floors with grease stains. In 1953, the percentage is 10%. The unions complain and then readjust their tone when it becomes clear. Complaint is noted in files. Carl watches morale sag and anger rise. On 16 June, construction workers on Stalin alley down tools over the norms and march. By the morning of 17 June, factories from the VEB, Electricola to Carl's own relay lines have small clusters of men walking to the city centre, then large ones. The slogans are mixed. Some shout for bread and prices. Some shout for free elections. Some shout old lines about the Nazis being gone and the functionaries being too fat. The crowd in front of the House of Ministries swells. A state radio broadcast calls for calm and negotiation. A rumor says Ulbricht has fled. Tanks appear. Soviet, low and iron. A Labour report from the day lists sabotage, hooliganism, provocation. The men call themselves workers. The files will later call them criminals. Karl is there. He hears a man with a hoarse voice shout Bruder, and someone else, Wir sind das Volk, long before it becomes a chant that the world hears decades later. He does not throw a stone. He does not raise a fist. He watches a boy younger than him climb a street lamp and wave a flag. He watches a woman drag a wounded man to safety. He watches soldiers as young as him load and unload magazines with their eyes on their commands. A crack splits the air, and a man in a shirt with rolled-up sleeves drops. There is a list later, compiled by a Western paper, of the dead. It says unknown, more than it says names. The mathematics of fear is an invisible variable. After the 17th, the arrests are daily. A note appears in his workplace mailbox reminding staff that absenteeism is counter-revolution. A man from the next hall is gone. The rumor is prison, or West, or both. The new course follows. Prices ease on some goods. Some arrests are quietly reversed. The line holds. Carl returns to work and does not go to meetings he would have to speak at. He speaks where speaking is safe, in the break room with the radio low, with a joke so obvious it can be taken as loyalty if overheard. The arithmetic of survival in a young dictatorship is subtraction. You remove a word here, a sentence there. You remove a word here, a sentence there. You keep your thoughts. He marries in 1954. A woman named Lotte, a nurse at a polyclinic, daughter of a machinist who lost 2 fingers to a milling machine in 1938, before any party demanded a salute. They put in a claim for an apartment and receive a room with a shared bathroom down the hall. The wallpaper is tired. The stove gasps. The neighbor is a widow who lived through 2 nights in a cellar while the building burned and never speaks above a whisper. They do the arithmetic of space. 2 drawers each. A cupboard at the end of the corridor with a lock. They learn the sounds that mean privacy and the ones that mean pretended privacy. The economic lines in East and West diverge. In the West, advertisements get glossier. In the East, slogans get bigger. Marshall Plan shipments in the West are replaced by the self-confidence of a new word. Wirtschaftswunder. Volkswagen factories hum. A denazified, then renazified civil service hums with it. Old experts given new titles if they are useful. Wages rise enough to buy a washing machine by the late 1950s. In the East, the plan is a discipline. Heavy industry is a pride, then a weight. Targets are missed, then doubled. Consumer goods arrive late or not at all. Meat disappears on Thursdays. Bananas are a rumor. Coffee is a festival if Wismut pays bonuses. A British Broadcasting Corporation report in 1958 lists East German productivity as respectable in base industries, poor in consumer goods. The math is inflexible. People want shoes and sausages, not steel and slogans. People leave. The number is the wound. Between 1949 and 1961, some 2.7 million East Germans, many young and trained, moved through Berlin to the west. The open sector border is the valve everyone knows about, and no one knows how to close without cutting the lung. The state tries moral pressure, then administrative obstacles, then heartbreak. Karl's sister, Inge, leaves in 1959. She walks into a registry office to apply for a marriage license and never returns to her fiancé. She sends a postcard later from Kreuzberg with a photograph of a washing machine. She tells her brother the streets are lit a little brighter and the apples taste like apples always used to taste. He sits at his kitchen table and looks at the stamp. He writes a letter he shows to no one, telling her she is a traitor and a coward and that she will learn that people who abandon families do not sleep well. He does not send it. He sends one with the news about their mother's legs swelling and about a child on the way. He keeps the harder letter in a drawer, as if the drawer can metabolize what he cannot. The state pushes its own arithmetic. It says the emigrants are criminals, parasites, seduced by Western propaganda. It says the true workers stay. It says the SED is the Antifascist Barrier, and the West shelters Nazis in suits. It is not entirely wrong, and it is not entirely right. Karl knows men in the West who wear medals under jackets that have clean stitches. He knows men in the East who wear party pins over shirts that smell of sweat. He knows the weight of both truths. 1961 is a pressure cooker year. Ulbricht, with his clipped beard and trimmed sentence endings, declares at a press conference on 15 June, "Niemand hat die Absicht, eine Mauer zu errichten." Nobody intends to build a wall. The quote is famous the moment it is spoken, and more famous later. The Soviets and Americans dance around parameters for a new status quo in Berlin. Khrushchev bangs shoes, then offers smiles. Kennedy looks young and tired. The exodus continues. Party functionaries measure the loss in numbers they only say in meetings. Doctors out, engineers out, lathe operators out. The mathematics of a state in slow bleed becomes unbearable. Operation Rose begins on the night of 12 to 13 August. Police units, border troops, factory brigades come out with trucks of barbed wire and tools. In Karl's factory, a notice goes up on Friday. A brigade is needed for a security construction. He volunteers. He writes later that he did not volunteer to cage himself, only to fix a leak. He tells himself the city needs a pause. He tells himself that the West has been raiding their workforce under the name of freedom. He tells himself a wall can be a door if someone holds a key. They move quietly. They work fast. The city is a series of sudden endings. Streets stop at wire. Windows become fronts. The Bernauer Strasse becomes the world's photograph. A church cut off, a first-floor window almost touchable across a line, people jumping. The first concrete blocks are not dramatic. They are small, low, clumsy. They make a knee-high mark and then grow. The term arrives in newspapers and on lips, Antifaschistische Schutzwall. The Antifascist Protective Barrier. In English broadcasts, the Berlin Wall. Nothing about it is euphonious. Everything about it is pragmatic. Karl pushes a wheelbarrow and feels watched from all sides. He feels watched by soldiers with green shoulder boards who do not know him. He feels watched by eyes from second-floor windows that are now the front row. A woman in a bathrobe stands with her hands on the sill. A boy holds a wooden train in one hand as if it can cross any border. West Berlin police arrive and stand with hands on hips. A man from a Western newspaper takes notes and shakes his head. A group of Westerners jeer. A group of Easterners watch with their hands in their pockets. Nothing resolves. The new fact is the line itself. He writes, "They say this wall will keep fascists out. It feels more like it locks us in." He underlines locks. He goes home with grit in his hair that won't wash out. He tells Lotte it is done. She says nothing. She closes the windows. Everyday life with the wall begins with paperwork. A new set of passes is issued. A new set of checkpoints gets names. The checkpoint in Friedrichstraße acquires a rhythm of shoes on tile and voices in 3 languages. The mathematics of visits becomes a ledger with tiers. If your aunt is in the West, you can apply. If she is an aunt by marriage, you may not be approved. If you have a funeral, you may be allowed, then not allowed, then allowed for 4 hours with an escort. If your brother sends a packet with coffee, sometimes it arrives, sometimes it does not, sometimes it arrives with the coffee removed. A memo, West Paketi, must be opened in the presence of a functionary. Coffee becomes a perfume in a small kitchen in Pankow. Bananas become a joke that children tell without understanding. The factory reorganizes. The wall reduces the bleeding of personnel. It also reduces an idea. The city is no longer a whole, even in the imagination. The S-Bahn lines are cut, and the maps have surgical scars. The U9 line goes around absences. His mother sits by the window and says nothing. Lotte learns to speak only in the kitchen with the tap running. The Stasi file that will be opened and read decades later shows a line in early 1962. S holds negative attitudes toward border security measures. He is not currently active. He is loyal to work. A functionary's balance sheet, the arithmetic of risk. In his shop, the party organizer organizes a session to explain the wall. He speaks of the brown past in the West. He mentions the person of Adenauer and uses the word revanchist 3 times. He uses the word peace 5 times. He calls the wall Friedenslinie, peace line, a term that never catches in mouths the way wall does. The brigades sign an appeal against nuclear weapons and then talk in the hallway about shoes. The plan sets a new target for switch production. Karl runs a file over a piece of brass and thinks about his sister. He thinks about her in a kitchen in Kreuzberg with a washing machine. He thinks about whether they would have ever gotten one. He decides it does not matter, and that it matters every day. West Germany fills with televisions. East Germany fills with slogans. Honecker's voice becomes familiar. GDR schoolbooks teach anti-fascist myth and socialist modernity. They insist the East solved the problem of the Nazis through true reform. They insist the West did not. West German schoolbooks catch up with the truth of perpetrators slowly, and then, around 1960, more fully. The Auschwitz trials in Frankfurt are broadcast. The names are German. The witnesses speak of German men doing German things to them, in German. In East Berlin, radios tuned carefully pull in the broadcasts, and the kitchens fall quiet. Karl sits with a cigarette that burns to his fingers and thinks of his father and the men on his father's unit roster and the oath his father signed and the oath he, Karl, refused by joining nothing beyond the FDJ. He makes a small circle in his notebook. Guilt is not a thing you can weigh, but it has numbers. He writes, "The mathematics of guilt is this. You always owe what can't be paid." He sees a man on his street in 1964 with a number on his arm. The man is visiting from Israel, someone's cousin. The story travels along the banisters. He thinks of the DP camp. He thinks of the wire and the laughter. He thinks of the girl with a yellow scarf in 1946 who made the boys on the street blush by singing a love song as if it were a revolutionary anthem. He remembers that he did not give his name or ask hers. He thinks, we said we did not know. We knew enough to look away. Life under the wall develops layers. The outer one is ordinary. It is the queue at the HO store, the handshake at the factory gate, the soccer game on Sunday with a radio on a bench broadcasting a match from Dresden. The inner one is calculus. It is who you can tell a joke to. It is what words to remove. In workplaces, the Stasi has informers. The default assumption is that 1 in 10 reports something. The reality is closer to 1 in 30 in many contexts by the 1970s, but the fear produces the deterrent effect. Karl is approached twice, once in 1965 by a man who offers to formalize his loyalty, and once in 1969 by a man who quietly tells him his sister's letters make him vulnerable. He refuses both times because he cannot imagine pointing at a neighbor, and because he knows the arithmetic of compromise is not cumulative. There is a line where every addition is a subtraction. He knows this from 1953. He knows it from his own quiet. He is not a hero. He is not a villain. He is a worker whose body carries the imprint of machines. He is a man who helped, with his hands, to build a structure he will spend years walking around, looking at, and trying to forget. The system rewards him with security. Wages are predictable. The polyclinic treats his back. The kindergarten is cheap. The rents are controlled. The shops sometimes empty, then briefly full at odd intervals. West German journalists who visit infrequently write about grayness and faces without joy. East German journalists write about Western decadence and faces without contentment. The truth sits between. At a factory party in 1973, when the country signs the basic treaty with the FRG and both Germanys enter the United Nations, Karl realizes the ritual words have become slightly less paranoid. The state recognizes the other state it used to call illegal. The arithmetic of sovereignty is solved by a less perfect answer. He takes his child, a son, to the Humboldt box to see an exhibition about anti-fascist resistance. The names on the placards are mostly communists. He looks for the pastor who hid a Jewish family he once heard about. He is not there. The memory is curated. In the West, a memorial to expellees rises with a stone that reads, "We never forget." Karl crosses into the West exactly once in 1977, after a relative's death, a legal visit he obtains after 7 months of persuasion. He is given a time window. He wears his best coat. He is searched in a quiet room. He exits through Friedrichstrasse with the feeling of stepping into a sharper photograph. He returns with a packet of coffee and a pair of shoes wrapped in brown paper. He is strip-searched at home on his return by officers who smell the coffee and ask about addresses he did not write down but remember. He is humiliated and understands. This is the price. The mathematics of the Cold War is a global spreadsheet that determines whether he can buy oranges in December. It is a defense budget in Washington and a grain harvest in Ukraine. It is an oil price shock in 1973. It is a parade in Moscow where rockets roll past Lenin's tomb while bread is rationed in a Polish city Karl will never see. It is the stationing debate in Bonn and the peace marches in both states where men like Karl walk for their children and say the word peace without irony or permission. He reads the newspaper. Neues Deutschland says the wall is a peace line that held. He hears a Western broadcast say it is a prison. He goes to work and files brass. He comes home and looks at the wall from a distance he could measure with his feet if the police were not where they are. He knows all the stories of escapes, the ones that succeed and the ones that end in blood. He knows the names that children whisper and the gaps in the registry where names should be. He buys a toy train for his son, who sends it along the floor toward a wall of chairs, because that is how the floor is divided in their living room. He smiles. Then he stops himself. His mother dies in 1979. The death notice is neat. The funeral is quiet. A neighbor whom he suspects once wrote his name in a report brings cake. He thanks her and means it. The arithmetic of loss is not ideological. Cake tastes like cake when a mother is gone. He sits after the funeral with his notebook. He opens to the old pages and sees the words he wrote at the wall. He adds a line, "We built to stop them from taking what we had. We stayed to keep what we loved. We accepted what we did not love because it kept what we loved near." He watches television in 1984 and sees officials shake hands with visiting Westerners. He watches Honecker visit Bonn in 1987 and Michael Jackson play in West Berlin while kids on his side climb rooftops to hear him. He hears the thud of the wall again in the bass line that bounces off concrete. He laughs at the absurdity of pop meeting concrete and writes in the margin, "Everything in life is a rhythm and a wall." The history of his generation is a set of paper trails. His Sprühakte is not a Sprühakte, but a personnel file with notes about his attendance. His workers' booklet shows increases and stalls. His residency permit has stamps that tell a story of stability. His Stasi file, opened after power turns to air and the office is empty in 1989, shows that someone called I.M. Schraubstock considered him evasive and firm in production. He will read that one day and laugh and not laugh. He does not have to be in 1989 to finish his thought. He does not need to hear the chant grow loud in the city he built and lived and doubted in to know what was always under his line from 1961. He has been living the war after the war as a long exercise in stoichiometry. He measures oxygen and fear, honesty and silence, a loaf of bread and a guilty memory. He calculates what can be said in a family and what can be suggested with a glance, and what must never be written. Schoolbooks end differently than they began. In the 1980s, some East German texts include more about Jewish victims, more about the breadth of persecution. An uneasy shift. In the West, memorials grow where car dealerships stood. A complicated honesty stretches thin across a topography of convenience. Carl thinks of this as a factory problem, a redesign that leaves the old parts in place, code that runs on an engine designed for a different fuel. He sits at his table many nights and imagines alternate equations. He could have left, he could have joined, he could have shouted, he could have remained silent. He did what most did. He worked, he adapted, he resisted in the smallest and least visible way, and he contributed to a structure that will be studied, remembered, and damned. He sees his young face at the wall and wants to speak to it. He wants to tell that face that words like fascist and peace are stones, and that stones can be used to build houses or prisons. He wants to tell that face that the difference is what you are allowed to do with your hands. The documents will survive. An Allied intelligence summary from 1947 will sit next to a GDR workplace report from 1972. A denazification file will sit next to a Stasi report. The mathematics of paperwork will be the archive of lives like his. The rubble landscapes will be visible in photographs that are too clear to be moving and too flat to carry the smell of dust in the lungs of boys who became men pushing handcarts. One day he writes again in the same pencil on the same grease-stained notebook. He writes a last line, dated without a day, only a year, as if he is tired of precision. It is 1987. He writes, "The front line for me ran not through the city but through our kitchen. The front line was a passport form, a census paper, a signature I did not give. They said this wall kept fascists out. For me, it kept the questions in."